Welcome everyone to this installment of GSA's Celeste Tournament. This is the second round featuring Flarebear versus Nero. Sure to be a great race, and I have, I believe, Flarebear with me for a pre-race interview. How are you feeling?
Pretty good. I feel like I'm the best at any percent I've been in a while, just because I actually felt like grinding it the past couple of days. Not because I feel like I'm gonna win this match, but I'm gonna try to look cool while I get destroyed at least. Yeah,
So,
Nero, go ahead.
oh yeah, I was gonna say, Nero is one of 6 people in the world who has a sub 30. Now, playing against someone of his caliber, is that intimidating, or does it feel like it kind of lifts the pressure off your shoulder?
I guess it kind of does lift pressure actually. I'm mainly only focused on how I do in my own run. I don't think that I'm gonna be worried about having a close race or anything, but yeah. Nero's not here to interview, but I know on both of us, we just both want to put on a good performance from each of us and just have something that's fun to watch. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great attitude to have. Are you gonna? You said you might try to look especially cool this race. Is there anything in particular you have planned, or just normal tricks?
If I'm not on PB pace, then I'll do 5. But if I'm on PB pace, then I'll just play it safe.
Okay, cool. I know we saw 5B earlier with Maya's races, which was very cool to see. And all right, any last words before you get started?
Good luck to Nero. Hopefully he has a good run. He PB'd yesterday in a race, so I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled out another sub 30. Yeah, that's all.
All right. Good luck, Flarebear. We'll see you on the other side. All right, and we'll get started within a minute or so. Like I said, this is the second round of GSA's Celeste Any Tournament. So both runners did have a victory in their opening rounds. Certainly are forces to be reckoned with. Now, Nero is in 6th place on the leaderboard, so he is among the best of the best, but anything can happen in these races. Just earlier today, we saw a great race with Psyched versus Maya Undefined. Maya, despite having a PB almost 2 minutes lower, did take a race off of Psyched. If any of you are wondering why they pick these seemingly random names before every race, that is GSA's cheat prevention method for this tournament. They don't know what name they're going to pick before they are told it right prior to the race. Proves beyond reasonable doubt that they are performing this in real time. It'll be interesting to see if Flarebear does go for the 5B strat that he was mentioning. Would be very interesting to see in a race, as we did actually earlier today. For those of you that aren't aware what that is, I'll probably explain it when we get to chapter 5. All right, and we're off. Flare's screen getting going a little bit earlier, but we will probably sync those up. Yeah, looks like we're going to do just that. Getting started with the prologue. Very, very simple start to the run. Not a lot going on here. Just jump as much as you can to get speed because the game doesn't even let you dash yet. Both runners will probably end with a 43 on the timer at the end of the prologue. Not much variance here. You can see they look almost exactly synced up. Nero might be a few frames in the lead going into Chapter 1, though. And yeah, unlike most modern speed games, Celeste does use in-game timer as the primary timer to determine the final times. So because the timer doesn't keep counting when they're between chapters, their timers will get unsynced throughout the race, but we'll sync them back up in the final run, or the final chapter of the run. All right, both making their way smoothly through Forsaken City. Nero just a little bit smoother, about a second in the lead already, but no mistakes yet. Oh, a little bit of a slip up there. Despite being the first chapter, City includes some of the most interesting tech in the whole run. Extremely optimized chapter. Alright, both runners really having no issues so far. Are certainly on pace to end sub 110, which is pretty good for a race setting. Nero with a 103 in City. Oh, and I've spoken too soon. Flarebear falling in the last bit there. No death, but that will cost him the sub 110. And he will be about 8 seconds behind, 7 seconds behind, going into Chapter 2, Old Site. Now, for those that weren't aware, Nero is not only known for running this game, but he's actually a former world record holder in Super Mario 64 120 star. Certainly has a storied history with speedrunning, and with his success in this game shows that he's a very talented runner all around. As I said, he's 6th place overall in one of the most run speed games of all time, even though it's only been out for a year or so. Not even 10 months. Alright. Both runners making their way through the dream blocks. Nero maintaining his slight lead over Flarebear. Making his way through the dream blocks. Oh, a little bit of a slip up on Nero's screen, but he makes it through the room without a death. With these screens, with battle and chasing you, it's easy to let a single mistake kind of cascade because you suddenly don't know exactly where the ghosts are going to be. You can throw off your rhythm, your muscle memory for the rest of the screen. All right, Nero making it through the end of the first section. I say the first section, but it is most of the chapter. He's now going through the awake section. Some very smooth ultras and corner boosts there from Nero. Let's see if Flarebear can do the same. Not quite as smooth of an awake section, but he gets through. As Nero is already into the beginning of Chapter 3. Just absolutely speeding through the outside section of Chapter 3 before he gets into the hotel. Very impressive stuff. Alright, Flarebear getting into the hotel as well. Now, I might be wrong, I might have missed something, but I believe no runner has a death yet, which is pretty impressive. Although one could say that the hardest chapters are still yet to come by a wide margin. Yeah, both runners again are playing very well so far. I mentioned that Nero has a 29.55, a sub 30, which is an extremely impressive time. Flarebear, I believe, has a mid 33 time as his PB, or at least the most updated one on speedrun.com. Which is still a very impressive time. It takes a lot of effort to get your PB to that level too. And it kind of shows the difference between them though in this race so far. Even though Flarebear hasn't made many major mistakes, if any. Oh, just cursed him a bit as he takes the first death there. And a second death in the same room. That's unfortunate. Oh, and a third death. Flarebear, come on. The death cycle in this room is a bit trickier, especially when you're used to the normal cycle. But that gave Nero a lot more breathing room. And another death in Resort here for Flarebear. It's all going a little bit off all of a sudden when the first part of it had been so clean. But if you notice that even when Flare isn't making major mistakes, Nero is still sneaking ahead because so much of this game is how smoothly you can move rather than the actual tricks or strats that you do. And so often the difference between the top runners and runners with 32 and 33 as PB is simply that 1% difference or so in the speed of how they do the regular things rather than the major strategies. All right, Nero making it smoothly through once again. His Flare is still in the laundry section. First try demo dash from Nero. That is a relatively newly discovered trick with I believe, a frame perfect input and pixel perfect positioning. You can actually dash through walls of spikes, or in this case, walls of dust bunnies. It's very precise, very difficult, but runners have gotten consistent at it shockingly fast. Oh, Flare having a little trouble with the coin room as Nero takes a death in Oshiro. A fairly punishing death at that. There are some rooms in the Oshiro section where a single death can cost you as much as 20 seconds. All right, Flarebear working on demo dash. Nice, gets it. Had to line up his pixels just right there. As Nero is through into the longest room of Oshiro. A death here would be costly, but I didn't manage to curse him. He makes it through and finishes with a 431 resort. It's very good. Before demo dash, that would have been nearly IL level. With it, not so much, but still a very good Chapter 3 from Nero, as Flarebear is in the first few screens of the Oshiro fight. And Nero is back on to Chapter 4, Golden Ridge. He wastes no time between chapters for sure. And Chapter 4, I would say, is probably the chapter with the biggest difference between watching a speedrun and casually playing the game yourself. All that wind on screen really makes a huge difference when you're first playing through the game, but through various strategies, it hardly ever slows us down in the speedrunning community, as Flarebear finishes off Chapter 3 with a 5:13. So he is 40 to 50 seconds behind Nero at this point. A fairly sizable lead, but we keep saying it and it keeps being true. Anything can happen in these races. As Nero gets A very tricky auto-scroller skip there. And Flare as well is on to Chapter 4. Getting that cool-looking hyper off of the water. Oof. And Nero is really showing his skill in this game right now. He is blazing through these levels, taking hardly any safe strats, at least that I've noticed. He looks like he might be gunning for another PB, even though he just PB'd yesterday. And as Flare said in the interview, it was during a race as well. So he is no stranger to getting PBs under high pressure situations. Flare Bear onto the auto-scroller clip as well. Goes for a safer but a bit slower version of it than Nero did. Oh, Nero taking a death there. Not sure exactly what happened. Some of these snowball patterns can be pretty tricky to get through. As Nero finishes up Chapter 4. Very impressive. 2 deaths. Not bad at all. Alright, and Nero is on to Chapter 5, Mirror Temple. Now, I mentioned earlier about the 5B strat. So the way this game works is every level has the main version of the level, and then an unlockable, harder version of the level called the B-side. And normally this wouldn't be relevant for a speedrunning situation because you only need to beat the A-sides to beat the game. But in this case, it can actually be faster to unlock the B-side, quit out, defeat the B-side, which then unlocks Chapter 6 and allows you to beat the whole game actually a little bit faster than you otherwise would. Yeet. However, the strategies needed to make it faster are extremely difficult, so still hardly any runners go for it, even at the level of optimization that this game is at. Flare also finishing up Chapter 4 with a slightly slower time than Nero, but still had one less death than him. Again, that shows you how important the smoothness of movement is in this game. Flare probably made fewer mistakes, but still lost time to Nero. Alright, Nero onto the dream section, which signifies a major switch in Chapter 5. Going through the cutscene skip room, as I call it. Maybe other people call it that too. Oh, Flare with a death there. Doesn't quite get the trick. And this section of Chapter 5 has some of the most interesting and creative strategies in the whole run, especially to do with these enemies called Seekers. You see right in that previous room, he hit one of the coins to unlock the door at the end. There's some really clever stuff you can do with positioning here to essentially have the enemies clear the room for you in some ways. Very tricky to get off consistently, but it looked like Nero nailed everyone. As Flare now is on to the dream section here. Alright, Nero gets search skip, no problem. That is probably the biggest time-saving trick in the game. Skips a whole section where you have to look for several different keys in a kind of maze-like area. But with a reverse hyperdash there, you can get through it, no problem. Alright, Flare also onto the Seeker section, as Nero goes to the Theo section, in which you have to carry the supporting character Theo for the whole last section here. Another part that has led to some very creative strategies. Alright, Flarebear expertly knocking the Seeker into... Oh! Nero with a big death there. Now that is a big time loss for one death. Very long room. Had dropped Theo a bit early, and you need him to get through the door at the end, so... Oh! Having trouble here, getting killed by the Seeker. Now this gives Flare a little bit of room to make up some ground here. Those were a couple of fairly costly mistakes from Nero. Oh, and another one. This time he doesn't die though. Recovers very quickly, probably only lost a couple seconds there. As he is on to the last room of Chapter 5. And Flarebear not yet even at the Theo section. Let's see, Nero finishing up Chapter 5 with a 1540. See, I suspect Flarebear is currently more than a minute behind. Again, really not that much in the grand scheme of things, especially with how things can go wrong in Chapters 6 and 7. Alright, Nero making it through the long feather section with the northern lights in the background. Those feather mechanics are one of the main differences between using a controller versus using a keyboard. Oh, Flarebear with a bad death, actually in about the same way that Nero died in that room. That's unfortunate. Barely gets past the Seeker there. As I was saying, the feathers are actually, you can control them more precisely if you have access to an analog stick, which most people playing on keyboard wouldn't immediately have, of course. One of the few differences. Ultimately, either way is viable for top runners. TGH runs on a controller, but Fladerby on a keyboard. Alright, Flarebear finishing up Chapter 5. As Nero makes it through the opening section of Reflection. Alright, then Flarebear with a 17 flat on the timer after Chapter 5. That means he is 1 minute and 20 seconds behind Nero at the moment. Very smooth stuff from Nero. And in fact, it's funny to mention that he recently PB'd in a race, because that is something he is famous for doing in Super Mario 64 as well. He took the record in 120 star from Puncation during a race, which is pretty much unheard of in that category. So he certainly has a reputation as a clutch runner who can bring his best in a race setting. Flare making his way up on the Kevin blocks, named for the sound designer of the game, whose name is in fact Kevin. Alright, Nero making it through the developer intended shortcuts there. Pretty nice that they put those in there for us. Making it through the short water section there. It's interesting. The original plan for Chapter 6 was to have the entire level be a water section. So thankfully, they didn't go through with that idea. Nero gets the battle and boost there, using all the momentum from flying on the Kevin block, goes through, keeps his momentum through a cutscene skip to nail the first hit on the boss here. And through the first few rooms of the battle and boss, no problem, is Nero. Flare's still working through the feathers on reflection. Oh, misses a feather and has to retry the screen. That's unfortunate. Not much else you can do there if you just barely missed the feather. Oh, and another death. He's trying to cut the corners a little bit too tightly, I'd say. There, it gives him a little bit more space there. Nero making it through one of the longest rooms in the fight as Flare is going through and takes a death on the shortcut there. Not sure exactly what happened. If you fall straight down, you should go through there. Maybe he tried to move to the left a little bit early. And he is through the water section. Looks very easy, but doing it fast can actually be very tricky. Alright, let's see if Flarebear gets battle and boost. Like a pro. Very well done, and he too is on to the boss fight here. Oh, Nero taking a death right at the end of this long feather room. That has got to be one of the worst places to die in this chapter. Makes it through, finishes the boss fight. Gets his second dash power up there. And we'll be moving on to Chapter 7 with a sizable lead. Meanwhile, Flare is making it through the boss fight. Not having any issues that I've seen so far. Through the lasers and the little glowing balls of death that she throws. Pretty nice. The developers made the hitbox for the laser a bit smaller than it looks like it would be. Oh, with an unfortunate death at the end there. And another one right at the start of the room. Oh, nerves aren't getting to him too badly. Meanwhile, Nero is on to Summit and is already on the last screen of the first section of Summit. And Flare driving his way through the battle and fight as well. But Nero's movements are so precise. He leaves himself no room for error, but it doesn't even matter. He hardly makes any mistakes. Strong performance from Nero so far. And from flarebear too. He's just had a few unfortunate deaths in exactly the wrong place to die. Oh. Nero, though, with a mistake, trying to go really high up on that dream block. Gets it the second try. And flarebear also finishes the boss fight and will be onto Summit quickly. All right, Nero onto 1500 meters. Debatably one of the, if not the hardest part of the run, many runners would say. Making the optimal cycles for these dust bunny movements can be a lot trickier than it looks. Oh! Just a little bit too slow on the wall bounce there, and another death in this long room for Nero. Going back to the previous room to gather momentum for the Ultra Dash strat there. Gets it on the third try. Not bad, better than I could do. As Flare is also on to the final chapter. Alright, Nero with another death in 1500 meters. This summit is actually a bit shaky from him. Or at least this section of it. Flare is about 1500 meters behind, you could say, as Nero makes it to the 2000 meter stage. Interesting that the Japanese font, the numbers are different as well. Picks up the strawberry for good luck. I'm sure he didn't actually intentionally pick it up. Sometimes it just happens. Getting a nice auto-scroller skip there. There's a lot of those in Golden Ridge and its Summit version. Right, Nero performing very well at 4,000 meters, or excuse me, 2,000 meters, which is based on Chapter 4. Wow, getting through that tight space above the block. I don't know if I've seen anyone do that before. And as Flarebear is still on the 1,000 meter section, taking a death to the pit there, Nero is moving on to 2,500 meters. Home of the infamous door skip. Once considered, oh, taking a death there just slightly too high on his hyper. As Flarebear begins the 1,500 meter section. Nero getting key skip just fine. Alright, let's see if Flarebear can make it through this whole section of Summit smoothly. He will make up quite a bit of time on Nero. So even though he's behind by a fairly sizable amount, that's the kind of stuff he needs to make up the difference. Meanwhile, Nero nailing door skip, making it look easy. And he will be moving on to 3,000 meters, the final section of Chapter 7. despite being the last part of the run, most people wouldn't consider it the hardest part, although there certainly are a lot of places for runners to lose time. Having a bit of trouble with the wall bounce there at flag 28. But another impressive thing about Nero's performance thus far is his recovery. Like, right, oh, I'd have spoken a bit soon, but normally when he makes a mistake, he manages to recover from it very quickly, losing a lot less time than runners who aren't as skilled in recovery would. And recovery might be one of the most important aspects of a race setting for speedrunning. Even though ultimately, when you're going for PB attempts, places that you might need to reset, you're taking another death here. On to flag 14. As flarebear finishes up 2,000 meters. On to flag 13. These are two of the longest flags in the section. A death here would be pretty costly, but he makes it through just fine. Meanwhile, Flare is on to 2,500 meters. But all Nero has to do is finish strong here. He is not quite on PB pace this time, but certainly, I believe, on sub 31 pace, which is a crazy time for a race. No more than, I believe, 10 or so people have a sub 31 PB at all. So to get a time like that consistently in a race, despite several mistakes throughout the run, really shows how consistent he is, as Flarebear also gets door skip. Very good work from him. Alright, and Nero has passed flag 1. Just has to get to the big red flag to finish his run and take a 1-0 lead in this series. Right around the same time that Flarebear is advancing to 3,000 meters. So Nero will live up to his reputation and take the first win in this best of 3 with a 30:33 time. Very impressive. Oh, and he's gonna, I thought for a second he would show us a bit of the core, but maybe not this run. Okay, as Flarebear makes his way through the downdraft section of 3,000 meters, already done with the first 10 flags here. Now for having a mid 33 PB, this time is quite impressive for him. That is to say, if he finishes strong. Into the updraft section. Onto flag 13. Can he get through it cleanly? Was there ever any doubt? Getting those smooth wall bounces there. That section right there is potentially a place where demo dashes could be used for further time save in the future, but we are not quite at that level of optimization. All right, 6 flags to go. Can Flarebear get a PB? Again, his PB, according to speedrun.com, is 33:39. So we'll see. I think he is definitely on pace for it, but can't have stuff like that. A death on flag 4 here. Not a massive time loss, but it might have cost him. Making it through the nervy feather sections here. All right, off of flag 1, and he is certainly on PB pace. Can he finish strong? Absolutely. And flarebear, although losing the race, gets a new PB. With a 33:15. Very strong performance here from both runners in this first race. And Flair's certainly showing his potential here. Had he not lost about a minute on reflection or so, it could have easily been a 32-minute time. All right, and both runners are still getting ready to go for the second race. And the winner of this race will go on to face the winner of Scrub Lord versus Hexblaze, which I believe is the race right after this. Or perhaps not right after this, but it is today. So if you're curious to see who will be facing off against the winner of this race in the quarterfinals, stay tuned. Yes, at 8 p.m. Eastern. So in 1 hour and 15 minutes is when Scrublord and Hexblaze will play. All right, and that was a 20 death run from flarebear, compared to Nero's 14 death run. Nero putting in the file name there. Kind of an interesting case of a Japanese speedrunner being very talented at a Western-made game. Typically, it tends to be the other way around, but they did have a Japanese translation for this game. All right, and the runners are about to get started once again. As I keep emphasizing, anything can happen. Just earlier today with Psyched versus Maya, as we pause Nero's screen and prologue for a quick sync. That match went to a game 3. Certainly anything can happen, especially if flarebear goes for the 5B strat that he was kind of teasing at beforehand. If he gets that and gets the particularly difficult corner boost first try, he could certainly make up a lot of time on Nero, who will probably not be going the B-side strategy. Both runners on to Forsaken City. I think it's fair to say that more effort has been put into optimizing this IL than any other level in the game. Currently, I believe the record is a 59.2 second run by Bye-Bye. Probably won't be seeing any sub 1 minute times from either of these runners right now or in this tournament altogether. Really speak to the level of optimization that this chapter has gone through. Oh, Flare with an unfortunate death there. Not sure exactly what went wrong. Nero making it through with a 104. Just 1 second slower than last time as Flare takes another death to the spike jump there. Alright, bit of a slow city from him. And Nero has about an 11-second lead currently. Making their way onto Old Site. Getting the cutscene skip into the dream block there. Getting through some of these very tight angles, taking an unfortunate death, just was a little bit too quick on the wall bounce there. Yeah, some of these angles, though, through the dream blocks, as we call them, are actually a lot tighter than they look. Nearly pixel perfect in some cases, if not completely pixel perfect. If you'll notice there, what Nero just did was go down the pit there before the first ghost even reached him. Now that's very tricky to do. Let's see what Flarebear does. Yeah, that's what I thought. And see, he goes after the first ghost has passed him. Just a more tangible example of how very slight optimizations in movement can make the huge differences in this game. As Nero goes on to the Awake section. Hitting those ultra dashes and corner boosts, just like last race. And he finishes at 342. Just one death so far in the run for Nero. Flare, I'm not sure if he had any deaths in Chapter 2, had 2 in Chapter 1, and finishes 15 seconds behind Nero going into Chapter 3. Strong Chapter 2 from him. Alright, through the spinning dust bunnies. Collecting the good luck strawberry, of course. Again, Nero probably doesn't even notice that he picked up the strawberry, but I tend to be superstitious, so always a good sign when you get more strawberries. Flare also picking up the good luck strawberry, as you should. And for those unfamiliar with this game itself, strawberries are a collectible scattered throughout the entire game that have absolutely no benefit other than just having collected them. That said, even though you obviously aren't going to collect many in the any percent category, there is an all red berries category that speedrunners in this community run pretty regularly. So if you ever want to see a run of this game that is completely different in strategy, or watch an ARB run, I believe the record is still a 52 something by the runner Bye-Bye. Meanwhile, both runners are having pretty good resorts so far. Flare taking a death there, and I believe he had a quick death earlier as well. Nero making it to the first or second button there. Second button, I believe. At around the same time that Flarebear hits the first. And Nero will move on to the laundry section. Nailing some very, very tricky cycles there. All right, Nero done with the big mess section. On to the 4-coin room very smoothly. Meanwhile, Flarebear is on the laundry section of Big Mess. All right, and Nero is on to Demo Dash. Gets it first try. Very impressive. For those wondering why it is called the Demo Dash, it's because it was discovered by the Chinese runner Demo Jameson. He's a runner who is typically focused more on ILs than full game runs, which is the level of optimization and experience with certain specific levels that allows people to discover really cool glitches like that. Or I shouldn't say glitches, but tricks altogether. It's debatable as to whether or not that's a glitch. Probably not, most would say. Nero making his way, or I should say flying his way, through Oshiro, finishing up Chapter 3 right as Flarebear starts the level with a... I missed exactly what his time was there, but I think it was a 420 something on Resort. No deaths. Very clean start to this run from Nero as Flarebear takes an unfortunate death there, jumping a little bit too early right into the Dust Bunny. As Nero gets started on Golden Ridge. Oh, going just a tiny bit too far. Flarebear does over the trampoline. Dying again. Not this time, though. As Nero is still flying the only way he knows how to go through Chapter 4. As Flare finishes up as well. So that was a PB from Flare last time. And I believe at this point last race, he was at a 9:11 on the timer. So he is actually ahead of the PB that he just set going into Chapter 4. But Nero the Unstoppable is still in the lead. Very smooth sections here. Getting, not sure what that reverse strat was supposed to do. Getting the duck jump there. And Flare is on to Chapter 4 as well. Nero into the snowball section. Runners of this caliber never have much trouble with the snowballs there. But if you miss a jump or dash in slightly a different way than you normally would, sometimes those snowballs can get right in your way, especially right at the end of the screen, sending you all the way back to the start. However, Nero avoids them expertly. Onto the final room and is cleared Chapter 4. With a 242, he is on blistering pace so far. But Flare is not far behind him. Also speeding through Chapter 4 as Nero begins Chapter 5. No trouble with the skip there. Oh. Dashes slightly the wrong direction for a second. Flarebear also dealing with the snowball rooms. No issues either. Yeet from Nero there. There is actually a strategy in the room that Nero just cleared that saves, I believe, a second and a half or so, but it is very difficult to the point where even top runners still aren't usually going for it in runs. Meanwhile, Flare finishes off Chapter 4 with a 2:59, 17 seconds slower than Nero's time there, but he's still probably on PB pace. And if you just tuned in, a PB pace set in the first race of this series by Flarebear. As Nero is on to the Seeker section. Sure, there's a more official name for it, but that's what I call it. Flare with a pretty looking reverse there. Oh, Nero with an unfortunate death on one of these first rooms here. Recovers pretty well, though, as he's been doing this whole series. Oh, no yeet for Flarebear. Just barely missing out on keeping his momentum through so he can go through that room. Go right under the moving platforms with enough speed to get to the other side. Nero knocking out one of the coins with the Seeker's explosion. Nero nailing search skip again. As Flarebear is going through the dream section. Knocking out the block, hiding the coin with the Seeker. Another very cool creative strategy that this community has come up with. As Flarebear is going through the first rooms of the Seeker section, Nero is already on to the Theo section, in which you have to drag your friend who's gotten himself trapped in a giant crystal somehow, never quite explained, through the rest of the level. And it can be annoying to have to deal with picking him up and throwing him again, but it's also led to some of the most creative strategies in this run. Especially, I would recommend anyone watch the tasks of this game, and especially this section. There is some crazy stuff that people have come up with. Meanwhile, I noticed Flarebear took a death at the start of that room. Not the smoothest mirror temple from him so far. As Nero clears it with a 15-15 on the timer. That pace is really very good. I might be misremembering, but I believe when Fledervi got the world record a couple weeks ago in a race, his time after Chapter 5 was a 15:10 or so. Meaning that theoretically, Nero could be on 29:35 pace or even better. Nails Lake skip first try, as Flare moves on to the Theo section himself. An example there of some of the cool strategies that you can do with this game mechanic here. Hitting several switches with Theo himself, rather than hitting them with the main character, Madeline. Man, that Seeker... The Seeker was coming to get Flarebear there. Didn't quite catch up to him, though, and Flarebear is on to the final room of Chapter 5. Meanwhile, Nero having no big issues with Chapter 6 that I've noticed. Onto the wall-breaking section. And Flarebear with a 16:50 on the timer after Chapter 5. Putting him 1 minute and 45 seconds behind Nero, if my math is correct, going into Chapter 6. One thing to note here is that because Nero has gone through the between chapter sections much quicker than Flarebear, his timer is actually quite a bit ahead RTA, so his lead is actually a bit bigger than it appears on screen. If you'll notice, he's at a 17:40 at the timer, at the same time that Flarebear is at a 17:25 on the timer. And for the purposes of this run, in-game timer is the only thing that matters. Oh, Nero, though, with a pretty costly death there on the shortcut section, if I can speak properly. Getting through on the second try, no problem. Through the water section. Again, we thank the devs every day that they decided to nix the idea to have all of Chapter 6 be underwater. It would have been cool maybe for a little bit, but sure, people would have gotten tired of that pretty fast. As Nero is on to the battle and boss fight, still on great pace. Weaving his way through the balls of death is Nero there. Flare accidentally grabbing the stalactite. Going a bit too far, missing the refresh. Wow, Flare making his way through the bumper section. Getting through the feathers. He missed a feather here last time, unfortunately. Not this time. Learns from his mistake. As Nero is progressing, you could say, even quickly, through the battle and boss fight. Every room he is continuing to chain together these hyper dashes like it's nothing. I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing from Nero here. Meanwhile, Flare making it through the shortcut, again avoiding another mistake that he made in the race. Alright, let's see if Flarebear can get Battle and Boost this time. Gets it. Very well done, as Nero takes a death in the long laser room again. I believe he also did the same in the last race. Meanwhile, Flarebear has begun the battle and fight as Nero is finishing up Reflection. Alright, let's see what Nero's pace is here. It looks like it's going to be about... Okay, a 21:24. So I believe he needs an 8:30 summit or better to PB. Looks like he lost a decent amount of time in Reflection, unfortunately. And an 8:30 is certainly possible for a runner of Nero's caliber, but it's going to be very tricky. Let's see if he goes all out here to try and get that PB. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. Oh, Flare with a unfortunate death right at the end of this long room here. Just dashed a bit too early. It's so easy to get in the mindset of go as fast as possible when running this game. That sometimes you go a little bit too fast. Have to be patient often with the jumps and dashes. As Nero is already onto the 1,000 meter section. Oh, a bad death from Nero here at the final room of this section of Summit, and another death. And I believe the PB is now going to be out of reach for Nero and probably to the sub 30. But he is still in commanding position here to finish it off strong and move to the next round. That said, if he continues to have deaths like this, that does give Flarebear room to catch up. As Nero moves on to 1,000 meters, Flarebear finishes up the battle and fight. No, I misspoke earlier. Now Nero is on the 1,000 meter section. Oh, missing a hyper out of the dream block there, having to do the backup with the spring. An example there of how skilled Nero is at recovery. A mistake that many people would have just died on, he instead knew immediately what to do to get back on his feet as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, flarebear is also moving on to the summit. A 9-minute summit will net him a PB, I believe. So hopefully it would be kind of bittersweet, mostly sweet, but for flarebear to get 2 consecutive PBs but still lose 2-0. Very much in the cards for him. He's playing very well today. But Nero, unfortunately, is playing just a bit better, as he is making it through the 1,500-meter section. We'll be on the final screen here. Flarebear about 1,000 meters behind, soon to be 1,500. Although that's not a perfect way of measuring how close they are, as different sections of the summit do take different time. Nero getting a second good luck strawberry. And flarebear clearing the 500-meter section. Smooth auto-scroller skip from Nero there. Nero having to backtrack just a bit to refresh his hyper for that room. And he will soon be moving on to the 2,500-meter section. Flare, though, with some impressive maneuvering through the dream blocks there, onto the final screen here. .500 meters, home of door skip, and apparently odd deaths from Nero here. And another one. That's 3 deaths in the last 20 seconds or so from Nero. Not sure what's going on in his head. Maybe he was focusing a little bit too hard on getting the PB. Getting key skip there. And those are the kind of mistakes that Nero is going to need to make for flarebear to get back in this race. But Flare has played the summit pretty well so far. I'd say he's almost certainly keeping pace with Nero. And another death there. And another one. This is a disaster 2,500 meter from Nero. Let's see if he can hit door skip though. First try, of course. That was at least 5 deaths just on the 2,500 meter section from here. Hopefully the nerves aren't getting to him, because flarebear is close enough that you can't get too nervous and make too many mistakes. Oh, and Flare picking up the good luck strawberry. The clutchest strategy there is. Meanwhile, Nero hitting flag 28 at the 28-minute mark. I believe almost certainly the sub 30 is unfortunately out of reach for him in this race. but how he performed in the first 5 chapters shows beyond any doubt that he is one of the best people in the world at Celeste. Meanwhile, Flare is still on the 2,000 meter section, dashing the wrong direction out of the bubble there, or excuse me, dashing the wrong direction in the bubble, going right into the spikes. As Nero is on to the flags here. The longest flags in the final 3,000 meter summit. If he is going to lose much time, this is going to be where it is. But he makes it through. Very clean. Skipping the 10th flag to save a few frames. Meanwhile, Flarebear making his way through the 2,500 meter section. Getting through the room that Nero died 3 whole times on. Can he hit door skip? Oh! Dies in the door skip room. Dies to door skip. Alright, I'm not sure if Flare is continuing to be on PB pace here because he took another death in this room. Meanwhile, Nero, no issues. Hits flag 1. All he has to do now is finish. And he does so. And Nero will be moving on to the next round right as Flare begins the 3,000 meter section. I believe with a time 7 seconds faster than his first race. With 14 deaths, the same exact death count as he had in the first race as well. Showing his consistency, I suppose, there. Same strawberry count too. Not that that's an actual important metric. Meanwhile, Flare may still be on PB pace. Alright, everyone, good lucks in chat for Flarebear to nail his second straight PB. That would be a very, very good performance from him. But he needs to clutch it out. 19 flags left. I was about to say 14. Not quite there yet. And now he is on flag 14. One of the longer flags here. A death here would be very costly. Clutches it out. Flag 13 is next in the updraft section. Gets the first coin, the second coin, the third coin, and is through to flag 12. Not skipping flag 10 for a little bit of extra safety there, even though it is marginally slower. We're single digits now. Can Flare finish it off and get a 2-minute run? Through the last major section. Count down the flags in chat, please. That's 4. Oh, taking a death as he gets to the feather. Getting it that time. That's flag 3. Getting that feather, no issue. 2. Needs everything he's got here. Flag 1. Oh, and it looks like the 32 run isn't quite going to be in reach anymore. That one death sealed it, but he does get a second straight PB with a 33.04. What a performance from flarebear. Going out of this tournament, unfortunately, but doing it as stylishly as possible with 2 consecutive PBs. What an incredible race to watch. That is a 33.04 final time for flarebear. He'll move up a few spots on the leaderboard with that. GG's to Nero. Like I said, he'll be moving quarterfinals versus either Scrublord or Hexblaze. Tune in at 8 p.m. Eastern for that match as well. Sure to be a great match. And I believe we're going to get a post-game interview with flarebear going here pretty soon. We'll see if he joins the call or not.
Yo.
Hi. Hey, flarebear, congratulations on 2 consecutive PBs. How does that feel?
Kind of bittersweet.
Yeah, I gotcha. It's really hard to compete with Nero. He's an incredible runner, but you really showed your stuff.
My goal just for this race session was to get a 32.
And it was that one
33.04.
death on 3,000 meter right at the end.
That may have cost it actually. I don't know. I think even if I didn't die there, it may have still been a 33 flat, but
That would have been even more painful.
Yeah, I don't know, the first run was just really hard to keep up because the first race I had an incredible summit. Like I got a 906. If I had got that, I would have solidly 32'd, but it was like super hard to keep up with. I needed a 920 and I got a 924. I was minus 32 at one point off of my 33.15 that I just got prior. And then
Oh, seriously? Wow.
Yeah, and then went all the way down to minus 11 at the end.
Well, it was a great performance. Unfortunately, you will not be moving on in this. Do you have any words about your experience?
It was a lot of fun. Also, this is like the first time that I've actually performed not terribly in a race. I kind of have a bad track record of being really bad in races, no matter what setting it's in. But
well, you clearly reversed the pattern there, nailing 2 consecutive PBs. Not sure anyone's done that in this tournament so far.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to play, but man, I'm bittersweet about this one. I'm going to be grinding it later.
Yeah, good luck.
And good games to Nero. I obviously didn't see it, but not much to say about that. I saw on my other monitor, like, Nero finished 30-30, Nero finished 30-28. I was like, yep, yeah.
Yeah.
Understandable.
He's a very talented, very consistent runner. Absolutely no shame in going out in this round. And we are going to wrap it up here. Join us in, I believe, 33 minutes for the next race in this Celeste tournament. It'll be Scrublord versus Hexblaze facing off, and the winner of that will face off against Nero in the quarterfinals. All right, see ya. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for having me.